Hello everyone and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming Mercury retrograde period, which starts on the 13th of December when Mercury stops in the sky and prepares to go backward and lasts until the 1st of January 2024. So this is basically like a gateway into the new year, not necessarily from an astrological perspective, but this Mercury retrograde season does link the 2 years, the one that is passing and the next year, together in a very symbolic and significant way. So, in this recording, first of all, we're going to be speaking about the importance, the significance of this Mercury retrograde period, even from a philosophical and alchemical perspective, because as Mercury stops in the sky, it holds some very interesting and important aspects, which do have a very powerful spiritual side to them as well. But at the same time, of course, there is the typical expression of any Mercury retrograde season where technology might break down, big delays in travels. Chances are this can also have something to do with, for example, strikes, for example, people demanding their rights, demanding like some kind of better legislation to govern their field of activity. So this is where it is definitely going to affect the workers, the HR industry, where, as I said earlier, strikes and protests and, the unions making important legal action is to be expected. But so this may really delay travels in certain places because the sign of Sagittarius, where Mercury retrogrades back into, rules a long distance travel by plane, etc. So there might be complications there. But at the same time, this is also a very strong personal energy where we are invited to redo, rethink, reanalyze everything that starts with whatever this Mercury is going to set up in our lives. Because it will, personally speaking, it will very much depend also on where around 8 degrees of Capricorn and 22 degrees of Sagittarius fall into your personal chart, because that is the path Mercury is going to go backwards and then forward again. But long story short, let us look at, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. So let us look at the day, the 13th of December, when Mercury is going retrograde, because the aspects that it holds have so much, written on them. So we can see that Mercury here is at a standstill. This is where it's just preparing to go backwards on the 13th of December again. And at 8 degrees of Capricorn, it holds, and this is one of my favorite aspects, a superb trine, a conversation of harmony with Jupiter from fellow Earth sign Taurus. Now, of course, Jupiter is everything that has to do with blessing, with good luck, good fortune, things going in the right direction, optimism, hope, faith, justice, etc. But we must take into consideration that when Mercury retrograde begins, both Mercury and this Jupiter are going to be retrograde. So that means it evokes the past, or this can be, for example, a longer distance, longer term past. Why? Because Jupiter is in the fixed sign of Taurus. So when the past is evoked from, let's say, a fixed sign, especially the Earth sign of Taurus, well, it can go sometimes back a long way. It really depends what needs to be completed, finished, or, evoked from the past in order to be terminated one way or another. But it can also be, not so long-term past, because as I said, it will really depend on our situation. But the important part is that whatever it triggers, whatever it evokes, well, on one hand, it is meant to serve us long term, so it is very important in our lives. On the other hand, it can do so much with like material energy, so physical health, physical body, routines, and how we organize our everyday life, especially from an earthly perspective. It can do with finances, it can do with self-worth, it can do with pleasure of our five senses, it can do with, a piece of land, earth property, and anything that has to do, of course, with justice and a legal side of things, because Jupiter is the planet which governs the course of justice. And we must not forget that even though Mercury starts its retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, it will ultimately go back to Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is Jupiter's home sign. It is the part of the sky where Jupiter rules and is able to bring forward its highest qualities. So it is going to be very, very important. Either for, as I said, earthly justice, secular justice, so to speak, but it can also have a very strong touch of divine justice. And this is where another aspect that Mercury holds, but not on the day it goes retrograde. This is later on a square with Neptune. And I do find the square with Neptune very, very, very important. Not just because Neptune is also going direct in December, not just because Neptune, in a certain alchemical way, has very strong similarities to Jupiter. It co-rules the sign of Pisces. It has to do with the divine. It has to do with fantasy. It has to do with how the ethereal, how the absolute, how the godly and the divine is perceived by us. That is also Jupiter, but in a way of our life philosophies, worldview, and our faith. Neptune is even more, let's say, ethereal than Jupiter. Neptune can take this to a much higher level where it is just sheer ethereal. There doesn't have to be anything concrete, anything real with Neptune involved. But both of these planets are very spiritual. As I said, they will have their own unique way effect on our faith, of what we believe, or the reality that we generate through our thinking, through our everyday thought process, through our inner conversation with ourselves. That is also very much Mercury. So these things are gonna be, how should I say, targeted by this Mercury retrograde season. So immediately we can speak about the larger alchemical, philosophical, or spiritual implications, where this in a way that will be very, very unique to all of us individually, is meant to highlight certain limiting or misaligned beliefs. Why limiting? Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. Sometimes the blessing is the truth of where our limitations lie. And sometimes we never ever saw the limitations as such, because Taurus, sometimes we may be in love with the limitation. It can be a bad habit, but which we love very, very much. It can be everyone likes comfort. Why not? Taurus has so much to do with comfort. So sometimes the limitation is deeply loved by us, and it will take such a strong energy to reveal it and give us a choice. What do we do with the awareness, basically? The awareness of the limitation. So this is why this Mercury retrograde is definitely gonna have some kind of impact on our worldview, because the only way we can fall out of love with a limitation is if our worldview and our inner faith is transformed a little bit or affected by a certain kind of clarity. And you can imagine that this individually makes a lot of sense, but this can also have a collective expression as well. And collectively, in the moment, in this present moment, in these times that we are living, faith has a strong significance and importance in the world, on the world stage out there, in so very many ways. Because many actions, Mars at the time when Mercury is retrograde will be in the fire sign of Sagittarius, so Mars very comfortable there, and it will hold a trine to Chiron. Chiron is also meant to go out of retrograde in December or it's January. Anyway, Mars trine Chiron to heal something, a wound, a damage, a hurt, an injustice done in the name of faith, in the name of religion, in the name of dogmatism, in the name of law, even secular law. And as you can see, Mars is still kind of close to the sun. It's not a functioning conjunction, but they are very close in the sky. So that the sun adds the illuminatory quality to it. So shedding light on stuff. So chances are this Mercury retrograde is really gonna reveal a lot of things for us, not just externally as in the world stage, even though that is very important. Sagittarius is the world stage. Sagittarius is different nations, different cultures, everything that is out there besides our own. So of course, this is where, like it or not, want it or not, all of us are influenced. All of us are somehow affected, even indirectly, even if you're not involved, by whatever goes on internationally, because that is the times that we live right now. So this Mercury retrograde is also really good for that. What is your position? What is your deep faith? What is your, I don't necessarily want to say attitude, because that is going to be found later on, but what is your tactic basically with this? How are you reacting to the fact that the international is influencing you? International legislation, for example, or certain inner legislation which is transformed, which is being changed internally because of external factors, if that even makes sense. So whatever happens internationally influences all our lives in this particular moment in time. So what is our position, attitude? What is our take on this? Our even, let's say, opinion. But we are striving for a healthy opinion. We are striving for an opinion which keeps us in reality, so to speak. Even though all of these energies, Sagittarius, Jupiter, and Neptune, when Neptune will square Mercury, are not objective at all. They're highly, highly subjective, but strongly resonating in an honest and truthful way with a subjective inner truth. That is already clarity. That is already strength. And that is already wisdom. You know what I mean? So this is really, really gonna alchemize, let's say, our wisdom. This will train us to become even wiser than we usually are. So this Mercury retrograde season can be quite life-changing for a lot of people. Why? Again, I have to say, I'm so sorry to repeat myself. Exactly because it can change our core beliefs. With that, it does everything. Because Mercury is the planet of the lower mind. You know, the way we chat, the way we converse with ourselves, the way we perceive life around us in a very down-to-earth 3D level, of course. But the lens of that is determined by our highest beliefs. It is determined by our faith, basically, not religiously or neither spiritually speaking, but more like quantum physically, where we generate a truth that we believe in. Like, let me give you an example, this most simplest example. Many business people, the strong, big, aggressive business people, are usually 1,000,000% convinced that everyone around them, every living soul, wants something from them, is there because of an interest. Well, of course it is. If you believe in it that strongly, you will make it so. You know what I mean? Of course, there is no way convincing that person in a dialogue way, so to speak, that if you change your beliefs about that, life is going to be different, at least a little tiny bit. Maybe 99% of people will not change, but maybe you will meet that 1%, which is the exception, which you're blocking out right now. This is just an example. But a Mercury retrograde can change even that person. You know what I mean? So this is where it is the universe, through karma, through destiny, and through our own inner authority and how we manage that, that is going to guide us to greater wisdom. As my favorite astrologer, Nadia Shah, says. And the sign of Capricorn, where Mercury starts its retrograde, is a sign which needs a lot of wisdom. Because basically, we can look at it from its higher perspective, like it is the stage of manifestation. Everything that is meant to manifest in physical reality, no, that's where it comes down. That's where the ether starts to take shape and form, because it is, Capricorn basically is the top of the sky, ruled by Saturn, the great karmic judge, so to speak, who, the lord of the cycles, who has to decide what is worthy to manifest and what it has to be stopped, blocked out. Again, Saturn rules Capricorn. So, of course, the ruler of the Mercury retrograde period is actually Saturn. And going to Saturn, this is one of my other favorite aspects, because Mercury, as it enters Capricorn, so also when it starts its retrograde, so not just when it enters Capricorn before its retrograde, but also during its retrograde, holds a sextile, a celestial conversation of harmony, but which has certain requirements to be, utilized, so to speak. This is a really, really positive aspect. Mercury and Saturn. Saturn makes something real. Saturn is no longer retrograde. It is slowly and surely starting to move forward. So it is completing things it has to do on its shadow path still. So that's tied together with the Mercury retrograde period to redo, to rethink, to solve serious issues in our lives. That is wonderful news, because taking action, wanting to be in truth, to look at the world or anything in your life, external, internal, whatever, with more truthful eyes, gets us a long way. This is really, really good energy to sort out certain things with our career, very concrete things, like someone needs an upgraded diploma, and for example, to take the initiative and make the choice to study something, to go have that study, go take that course. For other people still, they have certain qualifications maybe they're not using and haven't used. Do something with that, upgrade your life, upgrade basically Capricorn. your reputation in the world, whatever that means to you personally. Your reputation to the divine, for example, that's also a big possibility with trining Jupiter. But anyway, with the Saturn, it gives us groundedness. It gives us something solid to work with, and it blesses our actions, especially our mercurial actions. What we take care of with communication, words, um, intelligence, brainstorming, the productivity and the fertility of the intellectual sphere. So everything mercurial is really, really blessed, because what does Saturn do? Make it real, allow it to manifest. So you can imagine that besides very practical elements here, anything spiritual is also empowered, anything psychological is also empowered, because Saturn is in the water sign of Pisces, the sign of spirituality. And and this causes a certain kind of synergy between Saturn and the sign of Pisces, because Saturn in itself crystallizes, solidifies, gives a shape and form to the otherwise totally formless, purely ethereal sign of Pisces. So it condenses it. It makes it more real than it should be, for example. That's one of the interpretations of this. But on the other hand, Pisces, with its mist, with its corrosive brine, also breaks the structures and the rigid limitations of Saturn down. So even Saturn is more permissive than otherwise. So when Saturn is in the sign of Pisces, as I said, it makes it more real than at any other time. But this is a special Saturn in Pisces transit, because the ruler Neptune is also present. So that's why this Mercury retrograde is going to have a very powerful spiritual slash psychological slash karmic side to this as well. And the sextile with Saturn is truly one of the saving graces, much more useful than even than the trine to Jupiter, because the sextile also teaches us something. The sextile also empowers our mastery, our willingness to learn, our willingness to understand, our willingness to get better at something. So going back to the original thought, yes, this Mercury retrograde can be really, really good for work, career, but at the same time, how to have more power, more influence, more control over our lives, over our reality, how to be more free. Of course, whatever this means to us personally, individually, in a unique way. Why? Because at the time of this Mercury retrograde, Mercury is not alone here. It has Pluto almost at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So that's all about power. Power that we possess, but also power that we allow others, whatever that other means, to have over us. So you can imagine this philosophical view of power in a very concrete way translates into contracts, what we allow and not allow contractually, rearranging utility, usefulness, the correlation between time and reward. So time and money, let's say, but you can replace money with any reward. The effort and reward. So all of these things are gonna be rethought, re-examined by us, giving us the chance to be much more, in control. I do believe that's the right, but when I say in control, not in an aggressive, obsessive way, just to have a healthy amount of control over our reality and management of inner resources. And also this Mercury retrograde will change for a lot of people their connection, their relationship to authorities. Capricorn is authority, centralized power. Sagittarius, on the other hand, is the legislation. It is what authority does. You know what I mean? And also, what empowers authority? It is the cradle, basically, the seed of authority. So this is going to be very, very significant politically as well. Of course, individually speaking, in your culture, your country, but we will see a lot of changes, a lot of big moves, and a lot of exactly redoing certain things, upgrading like a law, upgrading a sector, upgrading like a function of the state, etc., etc. So yeah, and you can imagine this will also evoke things that happened, especially legally speaking, and the management of resources during the COVID. So you can imagine this will have some very interesting legal cases, maybe where maybe leaders of countries like prime ministers, big people who were managing stuff during the COVID are gonna find themselves in courts of justice where they are gonna be asked, what did you do with this, that, especially the money as well? No, because money, especially because Venus is in Scorpio, so debt and shared money is opposing Jupiter at the time when Mercury starts going retrograde. So yes, it is about let's clear Scorpio, clarification, investigation, digging up what has happened, who did what, and who is accountable, who is responsible. But this Mercury retrograde is also going to be very important from a not so practical, but more like philosophical and spiritual perspective. Again, finding or upgrading or refining, decanting your guiding faith, your guiding principles, your guiding worldviews. For some people, as I said earlier, but understand this in a more spiritual context than in a practical context, starting a new study, because some studies are actually started not by their utility, but rather the soul call, someone's soul calling. So some people starting new studies and pilgrimage, because Sagittarius. Some places with spirit will simply call your soul, especially around, well, if I'm not mistaken, around the 26th of December, when Mercury will be on the galactic center. Like that is the place, a certain spiritual place calling you. But of course, this part can have a lot to do with religion as well. For certain religions, different places are sacred, so it can definitely be that kind of pilgrimage as well. So traveling there, but more importantly than actually traveling, making the decision, the plans to travel there. Because, the travel under this Mercury retrograde period is not going to be very easy. Because on one hand, the Neptune square, that can mean false promises. But in a Mercury retrograde sense, it can mean that the plane ticket was sold, even though the airline knew there was going to be a strike or bad weather, or you know what I mean, stuff like that, where travels might be severely affected. Traveling by sea, by ship, can also be very tricky, especially around the 26th of December, because Neptune is water, Neptune is sea, turbulence at sea. Whenever the planet of travel, Mercury and Neptune, converse in tension, usually there is either storm or some kind of blockage with the water, or it can be great flooding in certain places in the world. which might disrupt travel. But even before that, when it stays in the sign of Capricorn, that can represent more like strikes and restructuring, repair, even breakdown. Because when Mercury is in the Earth sign, that is when the technology goes haywire. But in Capricorn, it might not necessarily be our own technology. It can be that big server, our computer may run, but if the server doesn't, then there's no joy. Or it can be, technology that interconnects us, like bigger technology that goes haywire, and we might suffer shortages of internet and social media communication and stuff like that. So this is why I think this Mercury retrograde season is so very... Oh, and before I don't forget, it's not just that it holds a trine with Jupiter. It's actually, if we want to look at it, a grand trine, because Black Moon Lilith and the fellow Earth sign Virgo is also involved. So if we add Virgo to this picture, it can be really, really a meticulous redoing, rethinking, reimagining, etc. of something, or completing something which was impossible in the past, but now it became possible, and we can redo that. Because Virgo is Mercury's ruling sign, so it's very important that this part of the sky is part of this larger conversation as well, especially as a starter, because this is when Mercury, it starts its retrograde. So every aspect that it holds is gonna give it the theme. It's gonna give it the tune, the pitch tune, or it's gonna mark what Mercury has to do as it goes backwards. And another very important thing that I would like to mention before we move on is that when Mercury, stands still in the sky and goes retrograde, it is at a new moon in Sagittarius. Okay, maybe a few hours after a new moon, but a new moon. So this has, and also a new moon which squares Neptune. So powerful disillusionment, but not in a punishing way, but in a way, everything needs to be broken down to its core to be rebuilt. So if we want our faith, our understanding of life and the universe and the cosmos and everything in it, from the most earthliest thing to the more absolute divine truth, we still need to go through this. The fixed, rigid set of belief to be this undone, let's say, and a new one to rise from those ashes. I know that this is a more like scorpionic interpretation of this, but Scorpio, Venus at this time is opposing Jupiter. So it is time, and Jupiter is the planet which governs faith. So it will be a powerful, upgrade without a shadow of a doubt. So, because of this new moon, I do believe that this Mercury retrograde season is really, really gonna do a lot of good, even though we have to admit it's not going to be very easy. It's not going to be a very easy energy, and not necessarily practically in this case. Because what do I mean practically? When reality around us just goes into chaos, into haywire, the typical. This is more like due to our interpretation of reality, due to our perceptions, due to our faith, because we will not know at one point what is real, what is not, or what is the right measure, what is healthy faith and what is not so healthy. So we will contemplate and distill these things, but ultimately it will lead to a fortification and solidification of our faith. And of course, that Pluto, personal power, and Mercury and Capricorn, when it will go back, that basically means how to have a fair amount, a healthy amount of control and a word to say and power in our lives. We are the managers of our own lives. And also, I almost forgot, sorry. When Mercury goes retrograde, we have a sextile. So again, another harmonious conversation between Mercury and Venus. And this is where the transformational, the purgatory, and of course the investigative side of the energy comes into play. But Venus in Scorpio, a powerful emotional purge. So this is why we are truly purging out some misaligned beliefs without a shadow of doubt. And Mars trine Chiron, it is a heal. Oh, sorry. Here it is Chiron. Mars trine Chiron. It is definitely going to be a healing experience. And if we even want to complicate it further than that, the sun, or better said, let's say the new moon, sun and moon together, trine the North Node and Aries in the sign of Aries. So even if it's not very easy energy, it can truly quantum leap us forward. So this Mercury retrograde will definitely be worth the hassle, the inconvenience, and all the annoyance that might come with it. And last but not least, before we get to the relevant dates, I'm so sorry to make this so long, but it's important. Mercury, the square between Mercury and Neptune, that I must say is a really hard energy, for mental health, because Mercury in itself is not very comfortable in the sign of Sagittarius, because it's the opposite sign of the one that it rules, Gemini. So it is exiled the furthest it is from home. And Neptune making it that much more worse by drowning it, by dissolving it. It will dissolve our sense of logic. It will dissolve our beliefs. This is the moment I was speaking about earlier. This is where we will drown in a little. We will drown a little bit, if that makes sense, but not for a long. It won't kill us, but we will feel like drowning in confusion. But this is the kind of confusion where it's exactly our faith, our understanding that served us in the old paradigm that is being dissolved and washed away. So we will have that moment. And if we put this together with vulnerability, for example, mental vulnerability, psychological, emotional vulnerability, and especially it is close to the holiday season, for people who have a really, really tough time, or people who have certain mental conditions, people who are going through depression, are going through anxiety, are going through the dark night of the soul. Of course, this will make it a little bit surreal, because I do believe that is the right word. So around the 26th of December, it will truly make life feel a little bit surreal, but it doesn't have to be in a bad way, because this energy gives us a choice. It doesn't want to drown us in depression, in sorrow, in sadness. Quite the opposite. It wants to dissolve the source of that, and we must allow it. And the only way we can allow it is to open our hearts to the divine, but of course also towards other people who really come with love. because Neptune is ultimately the higher expression, is the spirit of communion. It is the Christ consciousness, unconditional love. All of us are the same. We're just living the illusion of separation, basically. That is Neptune. So even if you're going through tough times mentally, psychologically, this is where you can truly attract the more benevolent, the more positive, the more benefic aspect of this through prayer and through, if it breaks our faith, if it breaks our inner structure, spiritually speaking, then that means whatever is causing the fixedness of the sadness and depression and anxiety, the fears and the sorrow, that it is that which is also going to be broken down, giving us the chance to embrace greater optimism, hope, and faith. So after this being said, let's move to the relevant dates. This 13th is a very relevant date because this is when it begins and the aspects that I said earlier. But to be totally honest with you, the 26th of November, not December, November, when Mercury entered its shadow path, is also very important because that was the first square it had with Neptune. So on that time, the 26th, 25th, 24th of November, what happened in your life? What was highlighted? What caused confusion? What caused uncertainty? What caused you to really, really have to think about something or how you feel about something? Because that might come back on the 26th of December this time, because that is the moment when Mercury retrograde holds the, actually, I wanted to say second square, but I do believe it's also the second and third square in one go, because Mercury won't really break up the square it will hold with Neptune when it retrogrades back into Sagittarius. It will on and off, as in more precision or less precision at certain dates, keep this square going. You know what I mean? So this is why we can either see it as the second square or the third, if there is a third square at all. But whatever theme was evoked around that 11th of November can be part of this as well. So, and another relevant moment is when Mercury holds the trine with Jupiter. But I'm not going to go back because it's just a few days before the 13th of December. So at the time of the Mercury retrograde, the trine with Jupiter is pretty exact, pretty strong. So the other relevant date is, according to my notes, the 21st of December. So here we are on the 21st of September, when Mercury is holding the sextile with Saturn. It's perfect for the second time. Just that Mercury is retrograde now and Saturn direct. So I spoke about that sextile, how beautiful and how important it is, because it helps us to make things real and it gives us the reality check of what's real, what is not real, even if it's not the big picture yet, because the confusion will set in. But this is how we start our searching, our investigation, so to speak, symbolically. Because let's say you want to change your job, even that starts with an investigation. What's available out there, your rights, etc., etc. So regardless of what the theme is for you in your life for this Mercury retrograde season, this is when you're starting to truly get into it. to truly start the work, start the collection of information at least. So I find that very, very important and beautiful. And also, it is so interesting that just a day after, so the 21st, 22nd of December, let's say, let's take both days, we have the winter solstice, we have the sun entering into the sign of Capricorn, a very, very powerful astrological moment, which sets the karmic theme for the next 3 months. So, yes, again, this solstice represents a new beginning, but also a closure. Everything that Mercury retrograde in that season has to finish up. But some of the things has to finish up are big and karmic, and they stem from the long distant past. Collectively speaking, without a shadow of doubt, and there is a good chance also individually, but of course that depends on your situation. So also on the 22nd and 22nd, 23rd, sorry, 21st, 22nd, Mercury is going to be holding a conjunction, a cazimi with the sun. But this conjunction will be present both on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. So, but I do believe that the exact moment of the cazimi is going to be on the 20th. My notes say 23rd. Okay, we'll go with that. This is really, really important because it represents a revelatory aspect. It represents when Mercury, our mental sphere, let's say communication, etc., does get a boost of information, of clarity, the right plan. Something is locked in, something is set in motion. So this is when we truly get ambitious. And needless to say, the sun is moving forward into Capricorn. Mercury, on the other hand, is exiting. So they are passing one another. So Mercury is going back into the fiery energy of Sagittarius. So you can imagine optimism, ambition, hope, faith, thinking big, dreaming big, desiring to understand, desiring to know, and desiring to have faith. So Mercury and Sun conjunction in this context is absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, it may have a tougher side when we must not forget the reality check. That is also part of this picture. But it is very, very, how should I even explain this? Because regardless of what is being revealed, even if it seems bad news to us, even if we dislike the information that we get, even if what we get is, well, this and this and this and this is not possible. For example, legally, because you don't meet the condition, financially, in one way or another. We must not take that in a sorrowful way, in a woeful way. Because, as I said, as soon as Mercury re-enters Sagittarius, it will start holding the square with Neptune. So we must not allow that to turn into disappointment, into all the bad kind of disillusionment. Where disillusionment, okay, it's not pretty or nice for anyone, but we can also add a bit of salt on it for ourselves. Like make it extra bitter, extra sour, extra sorrowful, extra resentful. So we must not do that. No, we must embrace whatever reality check and whatever truth we are being dished out, because that gives us power, even if it's like news we don't like. If we don't like it, no problem. This Mercury retrograde will help us find the alternative, find the other way around it. So we must take everything that is being revealed, in an accepting way, and not allow it, the disillusionment or, the reality check to turn into really heavy and, deep feeling of being let down by the divine, especially because Neptune, at this moment, we will have this tendency to blame it on the divine or to misunderstand the divine intent in a big way. But, that is our ego, really. That is the angry child from within us. The angry child is going to be very, very active. When a child is promised something and they get it, but not the way they imagine, not the way they had it in their head. If you're a parent, that usually leads to big tantrums, that usually leads to big catastrophe and scandal in the family when a child is disappointed like that. So we must not do it like that. We must take what is being offered to us informationally in an accepting way, because then we make it our own. Let's say you receive a present, a beautiful ring, it's too big for you. Well, you can either say, no, thank you, it's too big for me, but you can also accept it, thank it, make it your own by accepting it, taking it to the jeweler, and in a day or two, it matches you, fits you perfectly. You know what I mean? So this is what this energy invites us to do. So, and also look at Pluto. It's at 29 degrees, an erratic degree of Capricorn. So on the world stage and also our individual lives, big karma is going to happen. Something big is going to be playing out. And chances are in both, both externally, but also in our individual lives simultaneously, things that have to do with power, with control, with money, with big dreams, success, movement forward. So yeah, but also endings, big endings, because this is one of the final chapters when the old order is being closed, so to speak. So another important day is the 26th. So the 26th is important because, as you can see, Mercury is already comfortably in Sagittarius, conjunct Mars. Mars at 23, Mercury at 25 degree of Sagittarius. So Mercury is also still conjunct the galactic center, Neptune squares. Neptune at 25 degree of Pisces. So this is that tougher moment of disillusionment, but when we have to make it our own. This is where we have to use our spirit, because reality is what we make of it. This is the moment when how our fate has to realign is in a way revealed to us. Not clearly because Neptune, the confusion, but we're already in the process, you know what I mean? So we are going with the flow, even if the flow is, chaotic. But Neptune is direct at this moment. So Neptune is very, very powerful because it's direct and just barely went direct. So the divine source in that sense is very strong. Now, of course, this is where I have to say things I say at every Mercury retrograde, especially when Mercury has something to do with Neptune. Be careful with cons, with scams, with being the victim of theft, deception, or any kind of con. Especially that comes, let's say, internationally, or something which seems almost legal. you know, because Sagittarius is the legal. We must really, if something from within us says that it's too good to be true, or there's something fishy there, well, chances are it's fishy, and we should take it as such. So be very, very, very careful, because these energies are paradise for thieves, for all that category, you know, of people, and for lies, for deception, for fake promises, especially fake promises. But the good part of the fake promise, chances are by this 27th, 6th, 6th, 7th of December, that's when we see the falseness of a promise already made to us. You know what I mean? So that's when we get the bad side of it. And the 27th is also relevant because Mercury meets Mars in the sky. So Mercury is going to be combust. This will be a big, big moment in the Mercury retrograde season in the larger sense, because this will be the time for big communication, big action, big words. Mars with Mercury in Sagittarius. This is where what it reminds me of, the creational power of words, the Om mantra. This is when, as we speak, we create. And this is when we create the ethereal pattern, the architecture. Because after Mercury, because we can see Sagittarius as something still in the divine plane, but it's being created there. The plan is being made. But then it goes into Capricorn. That's when whatever was divine or ethereal is now starting to become real. So this is why this Mars and Mercury conjunction is so, so important and powerful. Big events in the larger Mercury retrograde season are going to be definitely taking place this time, 27th, 22nd, sorry, 26th, 27th, and why not even 28th of December, so the end of December. And at this time, look, Venus in the sign of Scorpio is trining Neptune. And why is this important? Because yes, Neptune has this tough aspect with Mercury and Mars. Let's not forget about Mars, because Mars-Neptune square is also very, very, very hard. It can leave you with no vitality. It can drain you physically speaking. It can send your will, your strong inner will, into confusion. So you might have intellectually the plan, but chances are you won't have it because Mercury retrograde. This is where it will confuse mind and will. You will not know what to do, basically, because of the Neptune square. But with Venus trining Neptune, you will not know the traditional way. This is why I said at the beginning of this horoscope, it will expose our misaligned beliefs, that which doesn't serve us anymore in any sense. So this will be the moment when we will get how to do it in a new way. So, but that new way can be sheer instinct. It can be something that is not usually specific to us. So even though this is, as I said, a disillusionment from a certain perspective, from another perspective is ingenuity and let's do it. Because Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, she gets what she wants. A compromise or an alternative way or a harder way, let's say, but which works like, and the divine is smiling upon it because Neptune. So this doesn't have just a bad side to it, because I repeat, disillusionment is like a reality check, but what do we do with it? We can embrace faith, we can embrace hope, we can embrace trust in the divine intelligence and go with the flow and not get so much upset about it. So I would like to go now on the 30th, when we have Mercury nearing the final degrees trining the North Node and planetoid Aries. So not only will Mercury stand still in the sky and start going forward the next day, so on the 1st of December, or sorry, I'm not the next day because it's 33rd, sorry, 31st. So in 2 days, but but also a powerful breakthrough energy. This is a really, really strong and powerful breakthrough energy because it is, after all, the North Node in Aries, our collective and also individual karmic path forward. This has strong breakthrough written on it. Maybe we will not see in a very, very clear way the breakthrough yet at this 30th of December or even going to the 1st of January 2024, but we will feel it. And look at this, the grand trine here, because the moon will be in Leo, Mercury, of course, in Sagittarius, North Node and Aries, and Aries. So we will definitely be feeling that we have done, or we are doing as we speak, something very, very big, groundbreaking, that is definitely a path forward. Now, of course, we are at the 1st of January 2024, when Mercury stands still in the sky. As I said earlier, it will still hold the square with Neptune. So that's why I wasn't sure to mention 3 squares or just 2 squares with Neptune. But it is moving back into Capricorn. It will start moving. And on this 1st of January, what's very important is that Mercury will hold a quincunx, a celestial conversation, which links together 2 signs and 2 energies, which apparently don't have so much to do with each other. So this will be a surprise moment. This can be either a financial or political or technological truth, reality check, or some kind of chaotic event that hits the news or shocks us in one way or another. But it still guarantees breakthrough. And other dates which I mentioned here, well, these are not part of the Mercury retrograde period because Mercury is already going forward, but they are part of the larger period when Mercury is still in shadow. So the first one is the 9th. So the 9th of January, here you can see Mercury conjunct the moon. So very, 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 very powerful. Squaring, but this would be the 3rd square with Neptune. So perfecting the square once again and for the final time with Neptune. But because the moon is here, this is when really it sinks in. This is when whatever this Mercury and Neptune square wanted to show us or align us with reality with, or disappoint us or disillusion us or show us our inner truth, that which we could not see until now, because sometimes that's where the disappointment is gonna come from. Like, let me give you an example. I don't love him. I thought I did, but I don't. You can imagine such an inner truth can be devastating, even if it's just us. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is when it will be really sinking in, even emotionally, because the moon will be there. The moon is emotion, Mercury mind, both drowned by Neptune, but in this case, it's the final one. So this is when we finally understand whatever we need to understand here, And Venus is by this time in Sagittarius. So the heart is also coming to understanding, because before the moon met Mercury, it met Venus. So this is a moment of understanding and realization. But of course, collectively speaking, this can play out as everything out there in the news is a lie. Everything is a lie. It's exaggerated, but in a way that also has its truth in it, sadly. The 14th, so here we are on the 14th, is where Mercury leaves the sign of Sagittarius and enters Capricorn, but it is still in shadow. Now, this is important, of course, because Capricorn, whatever we have done legally, philosophically, in travels, in knowledge, in quest for knowledge and study, while Mercury was in Sagittarius, now we're putting it to good use. We're giving it a shape and we're working with it. Working also supported by Mars in Capricorn. Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, very powerful, very efficient, and even self-disciplined to the degree that it needs to be. So really, 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 really good energy. And needless to say, let's go on the 17th. But it was operational even on the 14th. Mercury retakes the sextile with Saturn. So good. Very, very good energy, because Saturn gives it the final, let's say, approval that, yeah, it can pass, yeah, go ahead, yeah, manifest, execute it, okay, job's done, or I allow the job to begin, you know. So this is definitely going to be one of the highlights of this larger Mercury retrograde period, when breakthrough or something is going to be done, or something has green lights to go forward. And then, of course, oh, this is not directly linked to Mercury, but look at this. On the 17th, Venus trine the North Node. Actually, the moon conjunct the North Node. How very, very, very beautiful. A very beautiful energy. And finally, the 19th. So here on the 19th, this is like the cherry on top. This is like when we open the Christmas present. Mercury direct, but still in shadow, but only for a couple of degrees more. So in a few days it would have left shadow, trining Jupiter. So Jupiter is also direct. And by this time, the only planet that is retrograde is Uranus. But even Uranus is almost standing still at this moment, going to go direct itself. So do you believe on the 27th of January it goes direct? But more or less, most planets are already going direct at this time. So this means a big breakthrough. So of course, the Jupiter and Mercury trine is going to feel like a big blessing, like a realization, like a completion, like a realignment to our own sense of justice, whatever justice means to us, or our faith, our belief, our inner truth, and so on. So this is basically the Mercury retrograde season. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you everyone for all the love, all the support, all the kindness and generosity. If you'd like to support me, please share and like my work, and you can also donate in the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, wishing everyone a blessed and safe Mercury retrograde season. I know that it's Mercury retrograde, so it is hand in hand with a bit of stress and frustration, but trust me on this one, this is going to be truly worth the stress, the effort, and everything that it throws at us. Thank you again. Until next time, bye for now.